are fuzzy logic and neural network forecasting for digital economics and digital business models, data science and big data in evolutionary and simulation economics under sustainable development, intelligent manufacturing and information systems, and ICT education for economists. Our workshop were started since 2012, and you can see some statistics about submissions of paper and accepted papers during this year. This year we have 44 submissions and 14 papers were accepted for this workshop. This year we have about 32% of acceptance rate. It's more than previous year, and each third paper was accepted during this year too. The general statistics you can see here, and you can see that we had 146 reviews, 44 submissions, acceptance rate 42%, and accepted papers 14 papers, which will be presented this day. During all review process, we have reviews of 3 PC members for 30 papers and 4 PC members for 15 papers. Average number of authors per one paper is 3, and number of our program committee members are 52. Geographic of our PC members are 19 countries, and you can see here geography of our members. So the numbers of submission by countries in this year, we have 37% from Ukraine, 3.4% from Russia, 1.5% from Germany, 1% from Georgia, about 1.6% from United States, and 1.4% from Estonia. A number of offers per submission, the most widest number of offers per submission is 2 or 3. So we have 3 submissions with only 1 author and 1 submission with even 7 offers. Number of offers 137. So I talked about geographical distribution, about our office from 6 countries. So the schedule of our workshop today, third session, we start since now, 9 o'clock on Central European Time. Session 1, Neural Network Forecasting for Digital Economics and Digital Business Models. After that, we have interrupt till 11 o'clock. From 11 o'clock till 1 o'clock will be second session, Intelligent Manufacturing and Information Systems, chaired by Tatiana Payenko. Third session, since 2 o'clock p.m., Data Science and Big Data in Evolutionary and Simulation Economics. Chair is Jean-Hendrik Meyer. And last session, since 4 p.m., it's a ICT education for economists, chair Robert Rickards. So we will use a hybrid format. You can take part virtually using a link to Google Meet and physically in co-working room in Kherson State University in Ukraine. So we will start, and our first report, I invite Olena to start your presentation. Olena, do you need some technical assistant maybe before you start? Please turn your microphone.
Thank you, because I've just started and I thought something goes missing, but now I understand. Thank you. Presentation. Now you see my screen. Now you can see my screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute. Okay, so we can start.
You're welcome.
Good morning, dear audience. Let me introduce myself. My name is Olena Skrinik, and today I would like to present you our study with the title Prediction of Leadership Degree based on Machine Learning. This study was conducted and described by me together with Professor Tatiana Vasilyeva. The presentation is divided into three consecutive parts. First is problem definition, then investigation, and conclusion and outlook. The first section describes the current challenges before and from leadership in defined types of organizations, shows the current assessment methods of leaders, and compare with their intelligence analogs. The second part guidelines us from the analysis of the leadership facets through the parameter definition of the degree of leadership to the conception, implementation, and testing of the machine learning approach. In the third section, I present the advantages and limitations as well as the future potential of artificial learning-based leadership precondition solutions. So we can start. The modern world of work impresses with many variations of work models, internal organizational relationships and structures, and is characterized by technological development and global challenges. In general, work is becoming more mobile, agile, and flexible. It can be characterized as no fixed localization of employee workplaces, remote, mobile, and distributed workplaces, no or insufficient direct control of work performance, direct influence on employers not possible, for example, motivation and working atmosphere. One-to-one customer contact is there, and of course, the stressful activities. So, this is illustrated by the figures from studies conducted by Hans Böckler Foundation and Avantgarde Expert in 20 and 2021. You see that the increase in the number of workers working remotely from April 2020 has increased rapidly. This changes the challenges faced by organizations, which include the shift to digital forms in internal communication, process acceleration, digitalization of non-communicative work processes, rethinking further training measures on digital channels, developing new products and thus new markets, and create innovation. These challenges are reflected in the activity of the leader. Leadership is assessed by the performance and by the employees being led. So the examples of modern leadership measurements illustrate, for example, ticket tool for tracking work progress and 360-degree feedback assessment from all levels of the organization, such as managers, employees, and so on. So, the improvement of process quality through the use of smart technologies has potential for diagnostics, planning, implementation, regulation, and control, not only explicit for leadership, but also for organizational development. So, the aim of our study is to provide the monitoring of leadership degree for organizational development, to continuously track the ITER results of progress in leadership, to analyze the leadership parameters, and to achieve continuous improvement of leadership, its performance, decisions, and behavior. So we can start with our investigation. In order to consider and evaluate leadership holistically, we conducted a detailed publication survey. According to these results, 4 leadership facets can be identified. The first one is employees. These relate to the subordinates, the directive, team, and all related dimensions which are related to the guidance, motivation, inspiration, organization, coordination, and so on. The second one is company. Company as a facet includes all dimensions of leadership associated with company guidelines or organizational demands. Since these are often closely related to other facets, we mainly assign the parameters to other facets. Working performance as a facet includes all work-related dimensions of a leading unit, from the content and quantity context of the tasks to the own performance of subordinate units. And decision includes all dimensions around the distribution of different amounts of decisions to the subordinate units, as well as share of responsibility assumed. So, the constraints of further model are single or multiple persons can execute leadership unit due to increasing importance of plural leadership. Power at the formal and informal levels constitutes a precondition for leadership models, and we consider only formal power in the creation of our model. Leadership is merely a role with predefined goals, and no buttons were defined by us. The concrete leader uses the same behavioral, decision-making, and control patterns over the time. It means in the same situations. As there are no external influences on the leader, the personal characteristics are not shown separately in the described model. Therefore, they are considered constant. The predefined goal is to increase the company's performance. When considering such parameters as effectiveness of motivation, we restrict the parameter as a single factor influencing the performance. The degree of the employer's psychological readiness for work performance is also seen as constant. And employee's performance depends on his or her loyalty, level of competence, the conformity degree of his or her psychological or physical states with the working conditions, and the psychological climate in the anthropological system, in the organization or a group of subordinate units. Since in our study we consider the average values of all units subordinated to the leading one, we assume that the employees' competence levels and their physical and psychological states remain at the constant normal level, and all subordinated units have the working ability. So, to other thing, each facet defines a set of parameters that directly or indirectly influence each other and include from employee loyalty, working climate, effectiveness of work, performance, own and group performance, the span of control, degree of participation delegation, effectiveness of decision making, participation range, and so on. So each parameter is measured directly or flows into the calculation. Here, a few examples for it. I don't know what. Oh, no. Okay, that's the employee loyalty, employee motivation, regulatory intensity of institutional impact measures, employees' decision making, effectivity of it, and degree of participation. The parameters can initially be assigned to the input or output, which can be seen in the next slides. So, in our model, leadership refers to the degree of leadership, which is expressed by the following determinants. These are intensity of leadership, degrees of delegation and participation, effectiveness of motivation, performance, work climate, effectiveness of employees' work, and effectiveness of decision making. So, the previously mentioned input parameters. These include planned parameters, parameters not variable over a defined period, and unplanned changeable parameters. To the first group belong target performance and target duration. To the second group belong input, span of control, number of leadership units, participation range and limit, delegation range and limit, rights, degree of regulation of ordinance of work, and sum of rights. And unplanned changeable parameters count current performance and duration, employee loyalty, and working climate. So, you're probably thinking, from where did we obtain all this parameter data? Because for training and test of the model, we need a lot of them. The data was provided by the retail company Delight. For many years, this company handled its bookkeeping, management activities, organizational issues, and staff satisfaction mainly in analog form and with simple spreadsheets. The amount of folders that you can see here on this slide is similar to the amount of data processed for this work, digitalized and used for testing, training, and so on. The data was collected over a period of 5 years and 8 months, excluding short weeks due to holidays, and collected at the last day of the week. At the time of data collection, the organization had 1 or 2 levels of management. It means 2 or 3 organizational levels. Decisions were made by senior management, mainly strategic and tactical decisions, and subordinate management units performed mainly operational decisions and activities. This study relies on sales data and tactical sales and personal sales strategies. Input as a parameter refers to the calculated costs for labor, procurement costs, units to be sold, rent, electricity, taxes. The unplanned changeable parameters were measured. These are employee loyalty, working climate, current duration, and performance. Performance and input were measured monetarily. And then to output leadership parameters, according to our model, it comprises the following parameters: degrees of leadership, delegation, participation, effectiveness of decision making, employees' motivation, employees' work, intensity of leadership, and simulated performance. So now, knowing our input and output parameters, we can continue with the procedure of predicting management parameters. In this sense, we describe the leadership gray box model, which specifies the mathematical simulation model that shapes organizational behavior, and the database machine learning model, which predicts the parameters of the simulation model. Input parameters such as input, number of leadership units, span of control, participation range and limit, delegation range and limit, current duration, target duration are predicted in the simulation model and describe the behavior of the simulation model. The parameters current performance, right, employee loyalty, and so on are required to recognize the correlations. They are the markers for the changes of the other parameters. The model parameters, input, number of leadership, and so on, the predicted parameters, and other ones have been normalized to be unit neutral. I mean, not only this part predicted data, but also the other one. Okay, fit function for learning machine learning machine learning model is used for training and shows the dependencies or belong to prediction data and so also the training test data. The basic idea of the prediction is to determine the model parameters for the unknown test data, such as current performance, rights, employee loyalty, degree of regulation, or ordinance of work. For this purpose, we use a decision tree, which we describe in the further steps. And finally, the calculation of the output parameters, such as degree of leadership, effectiveness of employees' work, degree of participation, delegation, effectiveness of decision making, and intensity of leadership, simulated performance proceeds. Okay, the precondition for the validation of machine learning model is the division of the data into at least one training dataset and one model test dataset. For large datasets, the division into 80 test data and 20% training data is common, but I will show you our example. Oops, excuse me. You can see in our example we have the distribution 2 to 1. For reduced prediction data, the car-fault cross-validation method can be used. This involves making several runs on the same dataset, but split differently each time into a training and validation set, with the dataset split into a car-equal faults. An alternative would be leaving out cross-validation, where one dataset is always used for testing and the rest for training of the data. For example, with 100 data, the split is 90-90 to 1. Based on the available dataset, we use the couple cross-validation method. So further to the other things, theoretically, there are several machine learning algorithms that could be implemented on a person. These are motion process, multi-layer perception, car nearest neighbors, multi-touched, gradient boosting, and regression decision tree. For the analysis of disorderly scattered data, the method of regression decision tree analysis is especially beneficial. Trained regression decision trees represent pieces of information as decision rules in the form of a fictitious, more or less branch tree. These decision rules do not specify values for the independent variable, but the algorithm follows the branching direction in the tree to determine the estimated value. Compared to linear model, model evaluation in regression decision tree is simple but not as precise. Nevertheless, the prediction for the stated purpose is sufficient. Trial application of other listed machine learning algorithm has proven inferior results. So, the results of the prediction appear in the form of diagrams, as shown on the slide, and as evaluated comments to recommend or apply the necessary measures in the next step. For example, corresponding to the results appears effectiveness of employers' work remains constant, effectiveness of motivation remains constant, effectiveness of decision making remains constant, degree of participation bad should be improved, degree of delegation bad should be improved. Yes, of course we see the increase of the lines, but our prediction shows something else. Also the increase, but not so nice as in originated data. In any case, on the example pictures, you can see the comparison of predicted and original data from 37 data set. Okay, that's not all. To evaluate the prediction quality of the model with machine learning algorithm, we analyze the 3 sigma ranges and the histogram. Therefore, the larger and more coherent the training and data set, the smaller the 3 sigma area. The 3 sigma analysis of the effectiveness of work and the effectiveness of motivation is optimal. The deviation for the degree of participation and the degree of delegation is 0.18. You see these small ranges. And the area of the effectiveness of decision making shows a relatively large deviation. An example of the normal distribution of the prediction of the parameter intensity of leadership for the test data shows that the largest error value lies around the 0 line, indicating a relatively small deviation. So, despite good results and variety of advantages like management of leadership degree, learning from own experience, connection to ERP system conceivable, reduction of control and monitoring steps, timely provision of organizational development measures. Our model has a few limitations. These are complexity, higher data volume, preparation effort on the organizational side. And yet, we intend in the future the implementing personal characteristic numerous inter-organizational parameters relationships with single super and subordinate units, expansion to recognition of further patterns, and extension to further functions. So I want to ask you if you have any questions, and thank you for your very kind attention.
Thank you so much for your interesting presentation and research. So I propose our participant to pose your question. You can turn your microphone and ask about your question. Please. Do you have any questions? So maybe I will start first.
Yes,
Okay, dear Elena, would you please to explain what factors, in your opinion, has most impact on leadership degree, both positive and negative?
I can show you in my presentation. In any case, it must be seen not as positive and negative factors, but also as the parameters that influence the leadership degree. And in some cases, we have positive correlation between some parameters. In other case, for example, we have negative parameter, but it have, so to say, in combination, the positive influence on the situation. That's why we need the machine learning algorithm to forecast how we can use the combination of these parameters, so these factors, to forecast the leadership degree and also the simulated performance. And actually, I would say it's more about simulation performance, because we know that the performance depends on leadership parameters and leadership degree. That's why the thing with delegation, participation, decision making, because you can also see in your organizations and your groups that sometimes if you delegate your task or any task on someone, he can perform it good or perform it bad. Sometimes you restrict some employees, and after that you say, okay, today we change the task or anything else, and you see that your performance increase. That's the thing.
Okay, thank you. Did you consider all type of enterprise firms, small and medium or large enterprises, to investigate leadership degree, or it concerns only some target segment of enterprises concerning leadership degree?
No, I would say leadership degree is applicable for almost all companies, but it should be differentiate between, for example, our test training data comes from small company, relatively small, but of course with other data from another companies, I would say it would be larger, the data set, and after some iterations, the prediction quality will be better. In any case, we apply the leadership degree not only on the management unit, but also on other levels of the leadership. We mean only the leader as a power person, the managers of middle levels and so on, and not the informal leaders that we have in organizations.
Do you consider formal or informal leadership in organization?
We consider only formal leadership because at first I would say, of course, we want to consider all the facets of not only of the leader, but of the connections between group members or organizational members. But I would say we will perform it in the next steps of our investigation.
Thank you for all your answers. Maybe other questions from our participants, you can pose it during the presentation using this chat, or you can turn your microphone and ask your question if you have. So as I see, we have no questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you for your attention.
For your answers, and we will continue. So our next research prepared by Jean-Hendrik Meyer, Philipp Schaller, Florian Bechling from Deutschland AG to World Incorporation, network analysis of the capital linkages of German-listed companies. So you're welcome.
Thank you, Vitaly. Now I have to share my screen. Okay, can you see it? Yes?
Yes, we see.
Wonderful. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present my current research. From Deutschland AG to World INC. Deutschland AG, of course, is Germany incorporated, but it's a special word for the structure of the German economy before the millennium took place. So before the millennium took place, we saw in Germany mainly capital linkages only between German companies and German financial investors, and we also saw leadership places like CEOs or supervisory board seats that were mainly linking national companies with each other, but we had nearly no international network before the millennium. There was a lot of research done on Deutschland AG, what we call Deutschland AG, in the last century, but that completely stopped at the turn of the century. And we took the chance because we now have computers, good computers to do network analysis. So we took the opportunity now to redo this research and take a look what has changed meanwhile within the last, we started in we compare with 2006, so within the last 15 years. My co-author Philip, he has been at the ICTERI conference. Maybe you remember him. He has been at the ICTERI conference in Kiev. That was 3 years ago. He came with me, and Florian Behling is my current doctoral student. Well, the standard agenda, I would say, so introduction, prior literature, methodology and sample, results, and conclusion, of course. So, numerous studies point out that we have an increasing internationalization of ownership structures in companies. And this is primarily driven by the aggressive expansion of just a few globally active financial institutions. I just remind you of BlackRock or the Vanguard Group, who are in the ears of everyone, of course. There hasn't been no analysis of country specifics so far, and that can be quite interesting because each and every country has its own institutional framework. Each and every country has its own history, and it's very interesting to analyze what led to the internationalization here. So, as I just pointed out, in Germany, until the 2000s, we saw the Deutschland AG, which is a network of mutual capital holdings and mutual executive board positions and supervisory board seats. So, honestly speaking, they were only playing among each other. and that was completely isolated from foreign countries. Maybe a little bit within Western Europe, but that was it. So there was a stream of research until the turn of the century about the Deutschland AG, but this has completely stopped. No one knows why. I have certain hypotheses why this happened. The researchers focused more on international studies because they were forced not to do national studies anymore to be able to publish internationally, and accordingly no one was really interested in national data. And I think this is still the case, so we're still struggling with the problem that researchers are not interested in our own country anymore. So the research question is, does the global trend of ownership concentration of international financial institutions can also be observed for the historical grown Deutschland AG? And we do this using network analysis of German listed companies in 2018 compared with 2006. We chose these 2 years because, of course, we need complete data. That's why we can't use 2019, 20, or 21. We really need stable data here, and we need it's a bit of a trade-off. So we would like to have even older data, but there has changed too much. So if too many companies went bankrupt, too many companies vanished, and so on, we don't have comparable networks. So 2006 is some kind of, let's say, compromise between a comparability that must still be there and going back as far as we can. So it's a trade-off between that. And of course, we need to have data, and it's really hard to get data from the last century. In fact, it's rather an exploratory or descriptive analysis, so we don't test hypotheses so far, although we plan to do so. I will go into that later, what we plan to do. So it's our first attempt to use network analysis. There's not a huge body of literature about network analysis on capital linkages so far. The body of literature that is existing is shown here. Not all of them are using network analysis. So Laporta et al. And Faccio Lang, they do not use network analysis. Nevertheless, their results are key to our research. Nevertheless, I would like to point out at Vitali Gladfelder and Battiston, who presented a large-scale network analysis. They analyzed the ownership structures of 43,060 companies, which is a global network of companies. That's really impressive here, in order to assess the strength of control of the individual actors. They are able to show that a large part of the control in this corporate network is exercised by only a few financial institutions. So 40% of the network is held by only 147 firms. 3/4 of which are financial firms. So they describe this as a super or economic super entity, because there are only 147 firms more or less having control over the global network of companies. Of course, it's a bit fetched too far that this is a global super entity, because that's some kind of conspiracy theory, isn't it? Because these 147 firms do not necessarily collude with each other, so they're not doing necessarily the same, and they're not necessarily coordinated or something like that. The second paper I would like to point at, all the others are printed, of course, in my paper if you're interested into that, is Brancaccio et al. They use network analysis to examine the evolution of the centralization of network control over the period from 2001 to 2016. And in line with the previous mentioned study, they find that global network control is highly centralized. Moreover, the authors show that the largest holders, who cumulatively hold 80% of the global economic value of the network, do not exceed a 2% share level of individual holdings. And that's quite interesting because still today, researchers assume that strong investors strive for more and more share, but Brancaccio et al., they find that this is not the case. Even those who are very strong hold only minor shareholdings and do not strive to have high stakes in a single company. This suggests a significant shift in global investment strategies. There seem to be no longer a quest for controlling majorities, but the funds are being widely spread. Thus, the actual decisions of investors empirically contradict the findings of classical studies on shareholder concentration. Well, and the most recent study, Bajo et al., they recently studied the impact of the centrality of institutional blockholders on the value of a firm. So they make a classical value relevant study using network analysis as a predictor. In a sample of US firms. In doing so, the authors use network metrics based on social network theory and find that companies owned by central, prestigious, and highly connected institutional blockholders have a higher valuation in terms of Tobin Q. They're more valuable. The authors attribute this to the fact that network centrality allows conclusions to be drawn about reputation and status, which leads to a certification advantage of one owns firm. So if you have a strong shareholder, your value will be higher. Our methodology is easy to explain, but not simple in detail, of course. So we use a network analysis of the ownership structures. The companies and investors are nodes of the networks. Nodes here, they're shown as just those bullets or points. And the percentage of shareholdings as weighted and directed edges. So edges are those connectors here, and they are directed. That's why I use an arrow here, and they are weighted. They are weighted in terms of percentage of shareholdings. The ownership data is taken from Refinitiv Icon database. We research the 107 German listed companies that constitute the HDAX and SDAX. HDAX means the 100 largest companies in Germany, and SDAX are the, I think, 50 smaller ones. We had to reduce the sample because not all of these companies were already available in 2006. Some of them showed up later, so there's no comparability. So we only took into account those that existed in 2006 and existed in 2018. And additionally to those 107 companies, all the investors that have at least 1% of the shares. So there are a lot more companies in our network. Those are mainly investors. Well, and let's take a look at what we have done then. So here on the left-hand side, we see the network as of 2006. And here on the right-hand side, we see the network as of 2018. The colors are used for brown is individual investor, yellow is government, gray is financial services firms. I know that it is quite small, this font here. Red is pension fund, green is private equity or venture capital, and this, well, reddish kind of is industrial firms. And what we see at the first sight, of course, is that the network became a lot more dense. So the companies are a lot closer together, and there are more companies. So in 2006, it's fewer, and in 2018, it is more and more dense. They are closer together. So it's easy to see that. In the middle of those networks, in the very middle, we see nearly only gray spots. And only gray spots, these are financial institutions. So they are just like investment funds. They are just like the spiders in this net because they have connections to most of the others. Around these centers, around these gray centers, we see the industrial firms with this, well, reddish color, right? They are grouped around those investors. All others, like yellow, like governments, like pension funds, they are more on the outskirts of these pictures because they are not so relevant, to be honest. We do not have so many governmental shares. We do have nearly no we don't have any pension funds in Germany, so they are all from abroad because our pension system is not based on funds. And private equity and venture capital, greenish, is also just a few points here. So this is not exactly what we would expect. It's mainly investment funds. Results concerning the overall network. We have a significantly more dense network, which is driven by international investors with many shareholdings. So they have many shareholdings, so they're in the middle and they pull the net together. Investors that hold more than 1% own a total share of 49.75%. In 2006, that was only 41. So this group of investors became more powerful. Why? There can be two possibilities. The number might increase or the shareholdings might increase. Both is the case, but the number of these investors increased only by 7%. The number of their shareholdings has increased by 75%, and that's remarkable. So they spread their money more across more companies. They invest, they diversify. That's what they do. Today's investor hold an average of 2.22 shareholdings, while in 2006 that was only 1.37 on average, of course, per investor. And the average shareholding dropped from 7.9% to 5.4%. So the average shareholding reduced also significantly. I have added a few numbers down here, but let me not go too much into that. Let's have a look at the development of the relevant investor groups. So here we have 2006 for comparison, and here we have 2018. And we see that banks, insurance companies, and investment firms are still the most relevant investor groups. The number has even increased, but the share has decreased. So again, they invest smaller amounts, they diversify here. The number of industrial firms has also increased, but the average share has mainly stayed the same. Individual investors also the same. Pension funds, again, they all come from abroad, so seemingly a few more pension funds came to Germany to diversify their money here. Government, okay, and private equity has even dropped. So here, banks, insurance companies, and investment firms, they really play a role in this game. If we now look at the development of individual investors, here we have the top 5 shareholders in 2006, and here we have the top 5 shareholders in 2018. Please be careful because we switched the a year. So here we have 2006 because it's the top 5 shareholders in 2006, and 2018 is here, and here we have 2018 and 2006. So don't get this mixed up here. But what is striking is that obviously they're not the same. So the top 5 shareholders in 2006 were mainly investment funds based in Germany. Fidelity is, of course, international, but Union, Cominvest, DECA, they are all based in Germany. They're still existing, but they're not playing this role anymore. Here we have indeed the Vanguard Group. Here we have Norges, so the state-owned fund in Norway, and of course we have BlackRock. Here we have a German one from Deutsche Bank, Deutsche Bankdeutsche, DWS, and again an international one. So the investors that we see today are definitely more international, and they pushed aside the German investor companies. So this is what happened. They just replaced them, and they diversify more than expected. So as we see here, for example, BlackRock has an average participation rate of just 4%. They do not have a controlling minority at all, so they have nothing to say in those companies. So what is the conclusion? The global trend of ownership concentration of international financial institutions can certainly or definitely be observed for the Deutschland AG, for the German net of companies. In 2018, Germany shows an ownership landscape dominated by internationally operating fund companies. Compared to the baseline year, internationally operating fund companies are investing in significantly more companies while maintaining their average shareholding at a constant level or even a little lower, to be honest. The erosion of the Deutschland AG is expressed above all by a low number of holdings by German financial institutions and large companies in other large German companies. So the international investors came in and pushed aside the German investors. Let me give a little outlook. So this paper is currently limited to a German sample because it is our first attempt to use network analysis. We strive for including international companies here too. Nevertheless, the Gladfelder, Betteston et al. Attempt to make a global network, I think it's a bit too much because the paper is not, the data is not available for all those companies. Maybe the ownership data, but then we don't get any financial data. Network centrality measures might be used as independent variables in econometric models to show the effect of power concentrations. So this is what we plan to do and what we're currently working at. It's a bit this Bajo et al. That's why I pointed out at that paper. It's a bit that idea that we are trying now. So thank you very much for joining my today's presentations, and I'm very happy to answer your questions.
Many thanks, dear Jan. It's very interesting presentation, very interesting conclusions. Thanks a lot. And we have a question from chat from Hanna Harlamova. So the question is, you have used 2018-2008 listed companies, and what are your expectation for the 2019-2021?
Well, it's a slow development that we see here. So I wouldn't expect too many changes between 2018 and 2021. I don't expect any changes due to the pandemic. So the pandemic doesn't change that at all. What is possibly the case is that those companies are collecting even more money and distributing their money even more. What we see, but what we have not yet researched, is that seemingly BlackRock and Vanguard are able to use their power even without having a lot more than 4 or 5%. So that's very interesting. So even not having a controlling minority, or even not having more than, let's say, 20% to stop anything, or not having 50% to have full control, they can use their power nevertheless. So they're able to use their force, to have a certain control, even having a very minor share. That's very interesting here. But I wouldn't expect a lot of change in the company network within 3 years. That's a long-term process.
Okay, thank you. Anna, I hope you got the answer on your question. Okay, thank you for your comment. And any other questions? If you have, you're welcome. You can do it using chat, or you can answer your question and turn off your microphone. So before questions of our participants, I have one question. Dear Jan, what do you think, what's influence of companies' concentration on monopoly power of companies and economy at all?
Monopoly power. Well, we have strict laws against concentration or monopoly building in Germany. So I don't think that we have explicit monopolies here. But what we can have, and that's why I like your question very much, is an implicit monopoly. Because if the shareholders of large companies, let me make just an example, German car producers, if the same shareholders invest large sums into those car producers, of course they can influence the operative work of those car producers, and they can make an implicit monopoly in this group of producers. The same is true for maybe the chemical industry or something. So you don't even need a merger between all those car producers, but as long as there's one strong company in the background who's steering all those companies from let's say from the background, and this is quite unresearched so far. This is really unresearched, and I think this is a very interesting research gap for the future. So thank you very much for that question. That's a good idea for research in the future.
Thank you very much for your answers. If, dear participants, if you have any questions, you have time to pose your questions right now. If you haven't, then thanks a lot once more time, Jan. It's very interesting and very useful research. And thanks a lot for your answers on all our questions.
Thank you very much.
And now we will have one more presentation from Hanna Harlamova, Andriy Raskladka, Natalia Raskladka, Andriy Stavitsky, and Yulia Zabaldina. Topic of research: cluster analysis of Ukrainian regions for the level of investment attractiveness in the field of tourism. You're welcome, Diana. Anna, please turn off your microphone. We didn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I will start. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you to organizers. Thank you to Vitaly for inviting here and for having this ability to present results on behalf of such a mighty group of researchers. And despite we supposed to meet in person in offline format this year, but still we are online. But I guess it still gives us a lot of abilities to listen to what has been done during these years on the research of the topic of the conference. And I would like to mention that here I represent the research and the material that is made and developed, but not just scientists and lecturers of the universities, but active practitioners who are part of the groups that worked over Tourist Barometer of Ukraine, an innovative statistical publication that was presented in late 2020 by the National Tourist Organization of Ukraine. And so the results of this report are actually implemented in the Ukrainian ecosystem environment, tourist environment. And surely the information that will be structured in the report, it will be short introduction, methods declared, then we just shortly set about data set, represent model, and come to the conclusions. As well, I would like to make some short introduction to the topic. I guess each of you are aware on tourist issues in the world, in Ukraine. Of course, they struggled a bit after pandemic period, but still, if to talk about Ukraine, we have quite the potential, and there are a lot of districts and regions who are sure that they are very mighty in their potential, and they are not in a state position, but still we have a problem with attractiveness because of two reasons. From one side, because of the hardness of assessment of this attractiveness, and the second because of the statistics and methods that's supposed to be applied to assess and to present the results of this attractiveness. And the most issue is actually in the finding the optimal solution to present the real results and to argue these results to the broad majority of investors and potential stakeholders. Sometimes regions of Ukraine, they receive some ability, some grants, or they use own funds to collect information, to make some portfolios, to make some passports. But we see that still there is a failure in the implementation of this. And so there is still the research gap on the, first of all, on the statistics on the topic, and on the second, on the methods that could be used for the most realistic assessment of the attractiveness, tourism attractiveness. And mostly we could find good solutions in the investment attractiveness of Ukraine results, and we have agency of investment attractiveness, but tourism attractiveness is still mostly based on the cases, but not on the some general decision. And that's why we put the problem to implicate some really potential soft for the decision, for the finding the decision, data-driven decision actually, and to identify both problem and favorable investment regions. And we supposed to use the methods that would help us in this direction. First of all, it's a systematic analysis. Then we are going to implement some clustering of the regions that we have in Ukraine. And for this these reasons, we're supposed to use comments and graphical methods to represent the results that will be consumer friendly, in sense that each potential investor, each potential user of this information could be aware what is happening on the picture. So it won't be too difficult to translate the program results in the meaningful results for the person who is not too much aware on the mathematical issues. And it still should be based on the quantitative analysis. That's why, as a software implementation of cluster analysis of the regions of Ukraine, we decided to use Loginome analytical platform. It's not maybe so much broadcasted over Ukraine, but we are really deeply sure that it could be helpful. And it could be helpful for not even mathematically oriented user, and could be helpful for the really representative results. And as we see, these results, so I highlight once again, they were used in the Tourist Barometer of Ukraine for 2020. This platform allows the user to perform all stages of business analysis in a single environment that is very friendly, from data consolidation and model building to visualization and integration in the business process. And we suppose that the main advantage of the Loginome analytical platform is that it has a free version. So on places and regions, on the specific departments, it could be used quite easily without special trainings. And it's a low-code system, and it's available to almost all users of any skills level. We would like to mention that all steps in the clustering process are intuitive. That is very helpful. So, as usually in the places, organizations of governing the regions, they are not very interested in the trainings because they suppose that there will be some grants for this for their staff, or they would be very happy if the staff itself will manage to overcome these new softs. And there's still a lot of data that are not used yet for this data-driven decision making on the places. And as well, this Loginome analytical platform is some kind of visual designer that allows adjusting all process of the analytic integration, data preparation, modeling, visualization. So it's quite adaptive for the processing of the business decision. And as well, we browsed some literature. We, of course, are based on the experience of the authors. We're based on the experience of the analytical assessment of investment attractiveness of Ukraine, of the agency and main research. And we have considered other software decisions that were presented in ITER, the doctors, FACETS, STATISTICAL, that are quite commonly used for clustering the objects and especially for clustering the regions of Ukraine. And we understand that the Loginome system recently just appeared on the market of analytic platforms, and still it also has powerful tools for various types of clustering and effective means of visualization the results of cluster analysis. That's why, from the position of the optimization of the base of the data set, we decided to use such 13 influential indicators that are the most important in the total volume of tourist services in the region. We used official statistics, and we used official codes for these classifications of indicators. You see the list of our factors. Most of them are quite representative, I guess, no doubts, for understanding the tourist activity. So in some way to count this real tourist flow, because we understand that sometimes some tourist flows are not legislated, so they are still in gray zone. By means of these factors that are presented here, we made some attempts to reveal this information from the gray zone and to count it for the real assessment of tourist services. Of course, data clustering is not just a single step. It helps to support the decision of the important problem of data science. So we try to analyze and forecast the data set that we are considering. And the platform that we used proposed us clustering on three different methods. First one on the expectation maximization methods clustering, expectation maximization clustering, then k-means, and then j-means clustering. I guess most of participants of listeners to my report, they are surely broadly used k-means in their practice, because I guess it's quite common thing. I just would like shortly to share our experience in the EM clustering and G-means. Why we still put our attention to k-means? Not because we are lazy bones and we decided to use the most simple decision. We analyzed that expectation maximization methods is mostly devoted to effective processing of big data. It's quite good in the resistance to noise and data gaps. It gives a good ability to build the desired number of clusters and has fast convergence with successful initialization, but still we have quite short amount of data, as you see, and as we realize on the topic, tourist topic, and mostly it's based on the likelihood function, and it's quite a problematic thing for the short amount of data. That's why we were not able at the current stage of statistics available to come to these issues. As to the G-means, it's mostly the same that k-means. It builds clusters in which the data distribution tends to be to the normal Gaussian and Gaussian distribution, and sometimes it's based on the Siemens algorithm like fuzzy logic, but still it proposes the choice of these clusters. So we are not, the program proposes us the list of the clusters, but in our research we supposed to have the option to choose the amount of clusters. That's why having the table of the data that you see on the computer, we came to the k-cluster analysis. And you see that all screenshots are based on this loginom, are actually revealed from this loginom program. And our main idea is not just to make the clustering itself, but to propose the software that we suppose is quite convenient for the clustering issues on the level of regions for tourist services. And we tried to consider, first of all, the average values of services by each region, and we tried to show the most abilities of the loginom program for the user. And you see that the graphs that the program can present, they are quite friendly, and they're easy for understanding. They're colorful. That's why this program really has a potential for top managers to be used, and at least the materials that are presented by it could be really attractive for top managers. Then we tried to find out cluster profiles, and the system helps us to provide this cluster profile visualizer. And first of all, for 5 clusters. Actually, we considered 3 and 5 clusters. 3 is quite obvious that high potential attractiveness, medium potential attractiveness, and low potential attractiveness. If we consider 5 clusters, we add some between positions that helps us to find out maybe potential stars and not yet the losers of the situation. But still, I will share with you the results, and frankly, they are not very surprising from the position of other types of attractiveness. That still we have the situation of the divergence in Ukraine. So there are some regions that are divergent in the situation, and despite any program we implement, we still receive the same result. But the main, once again, the main highlight of this report and these attempts is to propose quite friendly soft for the managers on the places and the top managers that could be used for them to make the mathematically ground decisions, and not maybe just wait for the grants for these decisions or how they order these assessments to some companies, analytic companies, universities, etc. But how the simple manager, statistician, or who is sitting on their place and dealing with tourist issues could make some calculations, simple calculations easily, and come to the final decision result. And here is the graph of the contribution of each factor on the final result. As well, it's quite seen that we can, in such a case, demonstrate how some services are more important than other services. So for the 5 clustering, so for example, how we see here 68 services. We come back, what is 68? And leasing and operation of own or leased real estate. This is the prevailed factor for the clustering decision. So we still could put the attention on this factor for the trying to reveal the gray market, and for trying to reveal the gray zone in tourist sphere. So it's quite representative result. As well, we could see such kind of statistical visualizer that helps us to see the different values of the clusters. Sometimes it's quite important for understanding what are merges of the process that we're supposed to analyze. And here is the final results that we received on the base of the clustering for 5 sets. We received Kiev, surely like separate cluster, then 2 regions like Kiev and Dnipropetrovsk region like a second cluster, and then the majority of other regions, and the Odessa as well is the leader of the issues. And sorry, just I didn't know why I stepped a bit different. That's it. And as well, I would like to highlight that when we consider the solution of the problems for 3 clusters according to the same approach, we have Kiev city as the main major tourist center, then cluster 2 counts Dnipropetrovsk, Ivano-Frankivsk, Kiev, Lviv, Odessa, and Kharkiv regions, and the rest is the third cluster. That, of course, it's quite obvious from the real situation, but it's not very helpful from the position of the taking some decisions. That's why the program, and we highlighted that five clustering is the most appropriate. And once again, the main conclusion of the story is that Laganon system has a powerful tool for helpful soft for the assessment of any kind of clustering results and any kind of attractiveness, where we use a big set of factors. You can easily invert it in the program and receive quite visual results. I don't. I'm sorry. This is the end of the report. If you would have any questions, I really would be happy to answer them.
Dear Hanna, thank you for your presentation and for your analysis of your results. And you're welcome, dear participants, dear colleagues. Pose your question, turn your microphone and pose your question. You're welcome. If you have any questions, you can pose it using your microphone or using your chat. Maybe I will be first. I have first question. Anna, you told in the start of your presentation what there are no clear leader or outsiders among Ukrainian regions in the field of tourism. So after your research, did you have some proposals about opportunities concerning tourism for considerate clusters?
Yeah, thank you. It's a nice question. Actually, we have, despite any clustering, we have Kyiv like a leader. Of course, here we presented such list of factors, but if we come to our previous research, if we come to the research of other people who devoted their activity to the same topic, still Kyiv is the major leader with all services and despite any factors that are considered. It's quite clear, it's capital. But as well, we have Odessa region that is considered like a leader cluster, a leader and a separate cluster. And we do realize what is going on, so how they develop this region and actually this city, not the region, actually this city, how they try to make this attractive. And on the list of the factors that we considered, it's really quite close to Kyiv on the potential. And of course, once again, I highlighted that the leasing of the rental entities, it was the crucial factor in the analysis, as it appears. And of course, we understand that especially in the summer period, Odessa makes its maximum on this renting out, even if we understand that some of the issues are still in gray zone. So as to the potential of the future development, I guess we have Dnipropetrovsk region who could join to the Kharkiv region, Ivano-Frankivsk, Kherson region who could actualize their touristic attractiveness, surely. And our assessments suppose this decision, this assumption.
Thank you for your explanation. And maybe one more question concerning your methods. I see our participant, Olena, please pose your question.
Hanna, thank you very much for your presentation. It's very interesting, I must say. I want to ask you your opinion. How do you think can the less attractive regions increase their attractiveness for tourists from other countries?
Thank you. Yes, actually, this question is mostly in the sphere of marketing. For example, let's consider these regions like products that we have. And if we understand that some product is out of the interest for now, two ways. First of all, we could improve the quality of this product in some way. Secondly, we could improve the packaging of this, so try to make some marketing promotion company that would find some far place in this region, but pushes all interested tourists to go to this place, and in such a way will help the region, despite it's maybe some tiny thing for the tourist attraction is. And then third way, to make some this region like a supplement for the real star region. So, for example, to make some tourist routes through these regions, or to sell out some tickets on some attractions that will accompany the visiting of these regions. So, of course, it's the way how our the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, they will make their job. And I guess nowadays it's a bit separate from the topic of the conference, but still it's in the answer to your question. I guess creative industries could be a good attraction for the tourists, and maybe if we highlight, if we enhance the creative industries, maybe we will enhance the tourist attractiveness.
Thank you for that, Pai. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe other questions? So then I will have one more question. Anna, you talked about three methods which you used for your research: K clustering, G clustering, EM clustering. And the question is, did you use all these three methods? And if you so, then do you got same results using different methods of clustering, or different? And what results from this one did you choose for your presentation?
Well, thank you. Actually, we used just k-means for the presentation and for the final result, and those results were taken in the Tourist Barometer of Ukraine. But we really deeply think that EM clustering has a potential if we would be able to collect big data. Maybe it should be not just official information, statistical information, but some surveys. And if it will be put on the maybe daily data or weekly data, monthly data, it would help us to have this big data. And then we suppose that EM method could be more efficient. But as to G clustering, still it says that there is just one cluster and the rest of Ukraine. It's quite clear, Kiev and the rest of Ukraine. Of course, it's not a good result for us. We do realize that it's not so. Still, we're supposed to have more clusters. But if we take out Kiev from the analysis, we would receive mostly the same picture.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have time for one more question from our participants. If questions are absent, so thank you very much, Diana. So thank you for your questions and all your presentation and all results of your research.
Thank you.
So we finish our first session, and I'm very grateful to all participants who took part in this session. And for example, for all who pose your questions. And now we have 30 minutes after this session as interrupt, and after that I invite you to continue our workshop and to join to our next session. So thank you very much for all participants, for all authors, and we will stop in this session, and we will wait for you after 30 minutes. Thank you very much.